This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of December 10th, 2023. Content authenticity statement. 100% of this newsletter's content was generated by me, the human. When I use AI, I will disclose it prominently. There's a link in the newsletter as to why this sort of thing is important. One new thing that I did do this week is I have a prompt to do some essentially critiquing. So I took the initial section and I put that through, and it said, hey, you did a pretty good job. There's nothing horrendously wrong with your newsletter, so go ahead and publish it. But I thought it was interesting to try and get it to, to critique it and do some editing, but it didn't have much to say this week. So good for me, I guess. All right. What's on my mind this week? Where generative AI and language models are probably going in 2024. As it's heading towards the end of the year, and a lot of people are starting to publish their end-of-year lists and predictions. By the way, let's have a quick aside. Predicting exactly where AI is going is not going to happen. We can't even predict 30 days out, much less an entire year. Anyway, let's talk about where things are right now, where they're probably going at a very, very high level. Specific technologies, no idea. I wrote yesterday on LinkedIn about adversarial models, and I figured it's worth expanding on that here, along with a couple of other key points. We're going to start off with a bit of amateur, and I emphasize amateur, as I have absolutely no formal medical training whatsoever, no background, no degree, but some amateur neuroscience, because it hints at what's next with language models and generative AI. Our brain, yours and mine, isn't just one brain. We know even from basic, grade school biology that a brain is composed of multiple pieces, right? You have the cerebrum, the cerebellum, the brain stem, the eyes. The eyes are part of the brain. And within those major regions of the brain, there are a lot of subdivisions. The occipital lobe, the parietal lobe, the prefrontal cortex. There's a whole bunch of parts of the brain. And each of these regions in the brain performs specific tasks like vision, language, sensory data, etc. And those regions of the brain are highly specialized. That's why things like traumatic brain injury can be so debilitating, because the brain is not just one monolithic environment, right? It's a huge cluster of small regions that all perform specific tasks. If you look at the brain and recognize that it is like 15 brains really working together in a big network, you start to appreciate how complex it is and how much we take for granted as human beings. Right? Just the simple act of opening this email or clicking on this video and hitting play and then consuming that content requires motor skills, right? Language skills to understand what I'm saying, vision skills if you're reading or watching, auditory skills if you're listening, and then high-level thinking, cognition, processing to turn those words that I'm saying into something useful. This is millions, maybe billions of computations per second happening in our brains just to consume a piece of content. That's pretty remarkable. So why do we care about this? Because this perspective of a massive network of computer models all integrated together is where generative AI is probably going, and more important, where it needs to go if we want AI to reach full power. In the first half decade of generative AI, because honestly this all started really in earnest in 2017 when Google rolled out the Transformers model, we've been focusing on bigger and better models, right? Each generation of language model got bigger and more complex, more parameters, more weights, more tokens. This model has 175 billion parameters. That model has, was trained on 1 trillion tokens. Bigger, bigger, bigger. And this worked to a degree, right? That's not an unreasonable thing to do. Andrej Karpathy said in a talk this year, he was from OpenAI and Tesla and a bunch of other places, one of the few people as humans I think actually understands the inner workings of a lot of this stuff to a really strong degree. He said recently that there does not appear to be any inherent limits to the Transformers architecture itself except compute power. But in general, bigger means better. Make the model bigger, it's going to perform better. However, bigger means more compute power, and that is not insignificant. When the consumer, you or me, of generative AI uses a tool like ChatGPT to generate some text or DALL-E to make an image, what happens behind the scenes is hidden away, as it should be, right? People don't need to see what's going on. And honestly, these systems are so complex and unfriendly to look at that if people saw them, they wouldn't want to use them. Like, I'm not. It's like it'd be like driving your car by manipulating the parts of the engine itself. Now, no one would do that. But to give you a sense of what's really happening behind the scenes, let me briefly explain what happens just in a language model when you prompt it. This is going to be like going behind the lanes at the bowling alley and looking at how absurdly complex the pin setting machine is, which, by the way, is a lot of fun, and you should try it sometime. First, you need a model itself, right? The model is really just a big file, right? For open source, open weight generative AI, I actually keep a folder full of models on an external hard drive because that's how big they are. They're like 8 to 20 gigabytes each. And then you need some kind of model loader to load that model and provide some kind of interface for it. Otherwise, it just sits there as like a big file on your disk. The two interfaces I use for open source models are LM Studio for like general purpose operations, and then one called Cobalt CPP for creative writing. You then load the model on your laptop and configure its settings. And again, for a consumer interface like ChatGPT, you never see any of this. You never see any of this part. Just open up your browser window and boom, you're ready to go. But if you're building and deploying your own AI inside your company, this part's really important. Because what you have to do is you have to set up things like how much memory should the model use? What kind of computer do you have? How big should the model's environment be? How much working memory should it have? How should it be made available to you? And these are all done in pretty technically unfriendly ways. And then once that software is running, you can start talking to it. You open up the browser window and boom, you're talking to the model. Again, when you do this with a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Bing or Bard or whatever, all this happens behind the scenes, but it's good to know the steps, the procedures, and the pieces to understand the complexity of the system. Behind the scenes, as you interact with these models, you can see all the different pieces beginning to operate, how it parses our prompt, right? Takes it apart, how it generates the output one piece at a time, just like putting down cards in a card game. How much of the working memory has been used up, and how many of these things are occurring at the same time. When you're running these tools on your computer, you see the inner workings of a language model. Watching these things do their thing behind the scenes makes it abundantly clear that they're not self-aware, they're not sentient, they have no reasoning skills, and they're just prediction machines, right? It's kind of like knowing how the magic trick is done. Once you watch it, you're like, this is just a prediction model. Like, it's really not that special. And that means that a lot of the characteristics we ascribe to these tools, they don't actually have, right? Again, they're not Terminators or Skynet or anything like that. They're just prediction machines. So bigger models take more resources to run. I have a fairly nice Mac, and there's models I can't run because I will just don't have the memory, right? If I try to load it, as I have in the past, boom, the system just shuts down. And certainly big models like the ones that power tools like ChatGPT, you can't even run that on a laptop. You need a room full of servers to make those things operate. But at the end of the day, even the biggest, most sophisticated model is still nothing more than a word prediction machine. It's very good at what it does, but that's literally all it does. Which means if we have tasks that are not word or language-based tasks, language models aren't necessarily going to be good at them. What we need to be thinking about is what are known as agent networks. An agent network is an ecosystem of AI and non-AI components all mashed together to create an app that's bigger than the sum of its parts. It has a language model, for sure, to interface with us, you and me. It has databases and web browsers and calculators and custom code and APIs, basically everything that a language model might need to accomplish a task. If you think of the language model as it's like the waiter in a restaurant interfacing with us. The agent network, the rest of the agent network is the back of the house, right? The kitchen, the appliances, the people doing the cooking, and all that stuff happens back of house. We don't see that. And just like a waiter rarely, if ever, goes to the line and cooks something, a language model should not be going to back of house to do operations that are not language. Now, when we think of tools like ChatGPT, that's exactly what the average consumer expects of them. They should be miracle workers. They should be able to do everything. And then people are disappointed when that doesn't happen. We assume a language model is the entire restaurant, and they're really just front of house. So, what does this have to do with the future of generative AI? Well, let's put a couple things together. Bigger models are better, but more costly. Recent research from companies like Mistral have demonstrated that you can make highly capable small models that, with some tuning, can perform as good or better than big models for the same task, but at a fraction of the cost. For example, much has been made of the factoid that's been floating around recently that generating an image with AI uses the same amount of power as charging your phone. This was cited from a piece by Melissa Hakila over at MIT Tech Review from a study that's not been peer-reviewed yet. Is it true? It depends. But it is absolutely true that the bigger the model, the more power it consumes, and the slower it is, or the more powerful your hardware has to be to run it. If you can run smaller models, you consume less power and get faster results. But smaller models tend to generate less good quality results. Again, bigger is better. And that's where an agent network comes in. Rather than trying to have one model be good at everything, just like having one restaurant employee trying to be good at everything, bad idea. An agent network is an ensemble of models doing somewhat specialized tasks. For example, in the process of writing a publication like a book, we humans, we have writers and editors and illustrators and publishers. And a writer can be an editor, and an editor could be a publisher, and maybe a publisher could be an illustrator, but often people will, stick to the role that they're best at. AI models are no different than in an agent network. One model generates output, another model critiques it, and a third model supervises the entire process to ensure that the system is generating the desired outputs and following the plan. Imagine you had an agent network writing a trashy romance novel. One would write it, the other one would critique it and say, hey, that's not very trashy. And a third one would be constantly reminding them, hey, remember, you're writing a novel, right? Don't start writing a scientific paper. You're writing a novel. That's how that would kind of work. This, by the way, is how we make AI safe to use in public, make it customer-facing. There is no way under the current architecture of AI models to make a model that is fully resistant to being compromised. It's simply not how the Transformers architecture works. It's not how human language works. You can, for example, you could tell someone not to use racial slurs, but that doesn't stop someone from being racist. It just restricts their most obvious vocabulary. There's so many ways that you can use what appear to be benign words in a malicious way, right? Just as humans use language in an infinite number of ways, so too can language models be manipulated in unpredictable ways. So the antidote to that is to have these agent networks. One model is doing something, and maybe that's the one that interacts with people in public, and there's another model behind the scenes saying, hey, you can't say that. Try again. That's how that would work. So what is an agent network starting to sound an awful lot like? You guessed it, the human brain. Disabusing ourselves of the notion of one big model to rule them all, like this is not Tolkien. If we change about how we think about AI to mirror the way our own brains work, chances are we'll be able to accomplish more and consume fewer resources along the way, which means faster experiences, better experiences for customers, and less danger. Our brain has dozens of regions in here with individual specializations, individual models, if you will. Networked together, they create us, the human being. Our AI systems are likely to follow suit, networking together different models in a system that becomes greater than its individual parts. That's how complex systems work. That's how most complex system works in nature. Business is no different, right? When you're just starting out, it's you, the solo practitioner. You do it all, from product to service to accounting to legal to sales. You're a one-person show. But as time goes on, assuming you become more and more successful, your business evolves. Maybe you have a salesperson now. Maybe you have a bookkeeper. You have a lawyer. Your business evolves into an agent network, a set of entities, people in the case of humans, who specialize in one type of work each, interface with each other using language to accomplish more collectively than any one person could do on their own. This is the way generative AI needs to evolve, and the way that much of the movement is beginning to. Yeah, the big companies like OpenAI and Meta and Google are going to be touting their latest and greatest big models, but an enormous amount is happening with the smaller models to make AI systems that are incredibly capable, and companies and individuals who want to truly unlock the full power of AI will embrace this approach because it works. This, by the way, is also how you should be thinking about your personal use of AI. Even if you never leave an interface like ChatGPT, if that's all you use, that's fine. But instead of trying to do everything all at once in one gigantic, Frankenstein prompt, start thinking about the specialization in your use of AI. Even something as simple as your prompt library should have specializations. Some prompts are going to be your writing prompts. Others are going to be your editing prompts. Still others are going to be sensitivity reader prompts, or like the developmental editor prompt that I used for this newsletter. You pull out the right prompts as needed to accomplish more than you could with a single monolithic master prompt. There is no such thing, and you will get better results if you use multiple prompts in a process, in a system, in a network to accomplish your tasks. And if you're a more advanced user, think about tools like the custom GPTs. Instead of one big content creation GPT, maybe you have a writer GPT, an editor GPT, a critic GPT, and you would have an established process for taking your idea through each specialized model, kind of like an assembly line, a manufacturing line. As we roll into the new year, think of AI as not as the best tool for X, right? But what ensemble, what toolkit has the pieces you need to accomplish what you want? Whether you're a beginner user, whether you're an advanced user, whether you are in development or IT, think about AI as your brain and how many different things have to be networked together. You'll be more successful faster than people who are looking for the one model to rule them all. Also, I'm going to take a moment to remind you, this is a commercial plug. I'm going to take a moment to remind you that my new course, Generative AI for Marketers, goes live on December 13th. So in 3 days. If you register before the 13th with discount code EARLYBIRD300, you save $300, which is a whopping 38% off the price once the course goes live on the 13th. So go do that. The first lesson's free. You can go sign up for free and take that first free intro to see what's inside the course, to see whether it's a right for you or not. But I will say, of all the courses I've put together, this one is my favorite by far. All right, so besides the course, what else happened this week? We talked a bit about the future of retrieval augmented generative AI. We talked about generative AI and whether the industry is ripe for consolidation, and it's too soon for that. And did a fun live stream this week with my friend John, who, of course, you know from Marketing Over Coffee, my co-host, on building a custom GPT for sales. And so if you want some interesting sales tricks with generative AI, go watch that. Also this week, rolled out the first 5 issues of the 12 Days of Data, which is our annual compilation of marketing data that made the year interesting. And so the first 5 were private social media, Instagram for brands, Instagram for influencers, global chat GPT conversations, and content republishing. So the links to the newsletter in the newsletter for all of those, go check those out. There's a lot of fun just to see what was happening in the world. All right, for jobs this week, we have brand marketing manager at Cypress, brand marketing manager at Stand 8 Technology, chief revenue officer at Deep Search, chief revenue officer at Talents Group, growth marketing manager at 80/20, paid search director at AMP Agency, product marketing manager at Encode Technologies, segment marketing manager at Western Digital, and senior Salesforce marketing consultant at Cenovo, which sounds like a derivative of Lenovo, but okay. So there's definitely some stuff happening out there. Let's check out in other news this week. We have, of course, everyone's 2024 predictions on pretty much everything. That and generative AI, talking about that just about everywhere. Speaking of which, Google's Gemini launched this week, and the demo video that they showed apparently was just a marketing video and was not actually what the tool does. So there's been a lot of controversy about that. And all I can say is, why? Just show the real goods. There's this race to be the most impressive, to capture mind share in generative AI, and it's harming the industry as a whole, because we're getting to the point now where people are making claims that they can't back up. It's that old line from Top Gun, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash. That's kind of where generative AI is right now. In the opposite end, Meta announced Purple Llama this week, which contains a piece of software called Llama Guard that is their sort of safety model to be used in an agent network. And Llama Guard is really, the intent of it is you run this to fact check everything coming out of your models and say, no, that's bad, try again. So there's a case where it's not nearly as sexy a launch, but it is the real goods. What other stuff we've got going on here? We've got more stuff from Elon Musk. Nothing good happening there. Apple released its MLX toolkit for machine learning folks who want to use the Apple architecture more efficiently in its computations, which would be terrific. Also, my friend David Thomas passed away this past week. In keeping with his wishes to be as irreverent as possible, I hope that he reincarnates swiftly and inappropriately. So, but we will miss Dave. That is the news for this week. Oh, wait, coming up. So there's one, let's see, we have Social Media Marketing World in February, which sounds like it's far away, but it's really like 70 days. So it's not far. We have Marketing Profs Online in March, Australian Food and Grocery Council in Melbourne, Maycon in Cleveland in September, and there's 2 more that we're just finishing up the paperwork on them right now. They're going to be in early February, plus who knows what else. If you would like me to have at your event, there's a link in the newsletter. I have the Generative AI for Marketers keynote. If you want the workshop in person, that exists too. If you don't want to take the course, if you want to have a group workshop, let me know. That is the news for this week. Lots to think about as we wind down the year. In terms of publication schedule, so today is the 10th, so there'll be an issue on the 17th. There may I don't know if there's going to be an issue on the 24th or the 31st. I'm not decided on that yet. If there is, there isn't. But either way, thank you for your attention, whether you're watching or listening or reading. I'll talk to you next time. Take care. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.